The $3 billion bomber that cost more than building the atomic bomb delivered 8,800 horsepower across four Wright R-3,350 engines, pushing 141-foot wingspan, carrying 20,000 pounds of bombs. Boeing's B-29 Superfortress achieved 31,850-foot service ceiling where crews operated in shirt-sleeve comfort, while B-17 crews endured minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures with oxygen masks. Additionally, combat radius 1,600 miles versus B-17's 600 miles. However, each aircraft consumed $639,188, enough to build 3 B-17s. Yet revolutionary pressurization systems concealed a deadly engineering paradox that would kill more American crews than Japanese fighters. $3 billion total program costs. Remarkably, the Manhattan Project, developing atomic weapons themselves, cost only $2 billion. America spent 50% more money building the bomber than splitting the atom. This became the most expensive weapons program of World War II. Furthermore, each aircraft cost $639,188, enough to build 3 B-17 flying fortresses. Additionally, the first prototype alone consumed $3,392,396. Moreover, 1,664 production aircraft ordered before the first prototype completed flight testing. Consequently, Boeing received contracts for aircraft that existed only on paper. This was the $3 billion gamble that could have bankrupted the entire program if revolutionary technology failed to deliver revolutionary results. Later, congressional investigators would discover aircraft rolling off assembly lines that couldn't actually fight. Meanwhile, Japanese home islands remained 1,200 to 5,000 miles from available Allied bases. Consequently, B-17s and B-24s simply couldn't reach Tokyo and return. In fact, the vast Pacific mocked American efforts to bring strategic bombing to Japanese industrial centers. However, only one aircraft possessed intercontinental range with meaningful bomb loads. Moreover, revolutionary pressurization eliminated crew fatigue from oxygen masks and freezing temperatures during 14-hour missions. Additionally, remote-controlled gun turrets directed by analog computers, the first bomber with electronic brains. Clearly, this technological marvel would fundamentally alter strategic warfare doctrine. Nevertheless, engineers pushing the boundaries of possibility had no idea the revolutionary bomber would kill more American crews than Japanese fighters during early operations. Pearl Harbor transformed this developmental program into emergency priority overnight. Before December 7, 1941, 250 aircraft on order. Afterward, orders exploded to 1,500 aircraft by March 1942, a six-fold increase driven by strategic panic. Meanwhile, the Pacific's vast distances rendered existing bombers obsolete immediately. Consequently, B-17 flying fortresses couldn't reach Japan from secure bases and return. Furthermore, the China-Burma-India theater demanded flying supplies over the treacherous Himalayas just to stage bombing missions, logistically impossible for sustained operations. However, wartime pressure created impossible timelines. Later, General Henry Hap Arnold discovered the true crisis on March 9, 1944, arriving at Smoky Hill Army Airfield expecting to witness the 58th Bomb Wing's departure for China. Instead, he found zero, absolutely zero, combat-ready B-29s, despite his personal promises to Roosevelt and Chiang Kai-shek. Meanwhile, Edmund Eddie Allen redefined what test flying meant. Born 1896, this University of Illinois engineering student became America's most methodical test pilot, transforming aviation from seat-of-the-pants flying to rigorous scientific discipline. Previously, Allen flew airmail over the Rocky Mountains from 1925 to 1927, 8 forced landings in brutal conditions navigating only with map and compass. Consequently, this experience taught him that systematic preparation saved lives. Later at Boeing, he insisted on exhaustive ground testing before first flights, detailed written test plans, and engineering crews of 10 to 40 people versus traditional 2 to 3 pilots. His philosophy: never take a chance. Most testing is done on the ground before the ship's first flight. We know what the ship will do. Nevertheless, Allen harbored grave reservations about continuing B-29 flight testing. Specifically, the Wright R-3,350 engines troubled him deeply. Magnesium components burned at 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to sever wing spars in seconds. Still, war urgency demanded he continue as rapidly as possible, yet his crew knew the risks. To a man, they stayed with him. Revolutionary systems integration had never been attempted simultaneously. Specifically, 5 analog electromechanical computers per aircraft. The first bomber with electronic brains calculated ballistic corrections for airspeed, altitude, temperature, and target motion in real time. Moreover, General Electric's central fire control system enabled any gunner to control multiple remote turrets through periscope sights from pressurized compartments. As a result, combat effectiveness doubled. Gun range extended to 900 to 1,000 yards versus 500 yards for manually aimed weapons. Additionally, 3 pressurized compartments connected by a cramped 34-inch tunnel over unpressurized bomb bays. Furthermore, Garrett A research pressurization eliminated oxygen masks above 18,000 feet. Crews operated in shirt-sleeve comfort, while B-17 crews endured minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures and constant frostbite risk during 12-hour missions. However, this technological marvel demanded prices beyond money. Consequently, the integration complexity overwhelmed even experienced maintenance crews. Unfortunately, 19-year-old mechanics struggled with computing technology that wouldn't become standard for decades. Still, Japan remained unreachable from secure Allied bases using conventional bombers. Meanwhile, the alternative strategies carried catastrophic costs. Operation Downfall Invasion projected 500,000 plus American casualties, while China-Burma-India theater logistics consumed enormous resources flying supplies over Himalayan peaks just to stage ineffective attacks. Additionally, Roosevelt's 1943 Cairo Conference promise to Chiang Kai-shek demanded spring 1944 B-29 deployment regardless of readiness. Furthermore, his 1944 re-election campaign depended partly on Pacific War progress, political pressure driving impossible engineering timelines. Moreover, strategic bombing doctrine itself faced validation or catastrophic failure. Clearly, American industrial demonstration that allies and enemies hung in balance. More critically, crews were dying faster from mechanical failures than combat. Grim joke among airmen captured reality. More B-29 crews killed by Curtiss Wright than by Japanese. Now, the $3 billion gamble had reached its moment of truth. Nevertheless, nobody yet comprehended how catastrophically close the entire program would come to complete collapse. February 18, 1943. Eddie Allen's 9th test flight of the second XB-29 prototype becomes aviation's most costly single crash. Specifically, at 12:09 p.m., Allen lifts aircraft 41-0003 from Boeing Field carrying 10 crew members to collect engine cooling data. Then, 8 minutes later, fire erupts in the number 1 engine. Initially, Allen feathers the propeller, cuts fuel, discharges carbon dioxide extinguishers. Apparently, the fire appears extinguished. However, at 12:25 p.m., crossing Lake Washington at 1,200 feet, on approach to Boeing Field, a second explosion rocks the aircraft. Suddenly, radio operator Harry Ralston's voice crackles over the interphone. "Allen, better get this thing down in a hurry. The wing spar's burning badly." Desperately, 3 crew members bail out. Altitude too low for parachutes to deploy. Tragically, all killed on impact. Finally, at 12:26 p.m., 17 minutes after takeoff, and just 3 miles from Boeing Field, the B-29 crashes into the Fry meat packing plant on Airport Way. Immediately, nearly 5,000 gallons of gasoline create a massive fireball. Total casualties: 31 dead, 8 crew aboard the aircraft, 3 who bailed out, 20 Fry plant workers, and 23-year-old Seattle firefighter Luther Dean Bonner, who dies fighting the blaze the next morning. The cause? Right R. 3,350 magnesium crankcases burning at 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to sever the main wing spar in seconds. Later, Time magazine writes, Eddie Allen, who had no peer in his combination of piloting virtuosity and engineering skill, probably no other man in aviation could be so hardly spared. Ultimately, this tragedy reveals the hidden cost of revolutionary technology. More B-29 crews would die from engine fires than from Japanese fighters. March 9th, 1944. General Arnold arrives at Smoky Hill Army Airfield, expecting to witness the 58th Bomb Wing's departure for China. Instead, he discovers zero, absolutely zero, combat-ready B-29s, despite his personal promises to Roosevelt and Chiang Kai-shek. Specifically, of 97 aircraft delivered, only 16 are flyable. Understandably, Arnold is livid. Consequently, this triggers the Battle of Kansas, the most desperate emergency modification program in aviation history. Immediately, Arnold mobilizes 600 Boeing workers from Seattle, 1,200 specialist technicians from across the country, and gives unlimited authority to fix the crisis. Meanwhile, work proceeds outdoors during one of the worst winters on record. Specifically, temperatures range from 2 degrees Fahrenheit to 20 degrees Fahrenheit with wind and snow, yet modifications continue around the clock. Therefore, workers endure 20-minute shifts before needing to warm at small gasoline heaters scattered across flight lines. Additionally, high-altitude flying suits issued to combat extreme cold. Furthermore, the workforce labors 2 10-hour shifts initially, then around-the-clock schedules. Often, key specialists work consecutive shifts for 3 days straight, catching minutes of sleep when they can be spared. Finally, through superhuman efforts, 150 combat-ready B-29s are delivered by April 15, 1944. Nevertheless, this crisis exposes the program's fundamental vulnerability: rush production creating aircraft that require complete rebuilding before they can fight. Now, the $3 billion gamble has reached its most dangerous moment, yet somehow the program survives through sheer human determination and willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Curtis LeMay inherited a program on the verge of catastrophic failure. Specifically, high-altitude precision bombing achieved less than 10% accuracy. Bombs scattered wildly in 250+ miles per hour, jet stream winds that meteorologists hadn't predicted. Consequently, General Haywood Hansel was relieved for insisting on failed doctrine. Clearly, LeMay understood he faced the same fate without immediate results. Then, March 1945 brought revolutionary tactical transformation. Dramatically, LeMay abandoned 2 decades of American air doctrine. Altitude dropped from 30,000+ feet to 5,000 to 9,000 feet. Night operations replaced daylight missions. All defensive guns stripped except tail turrets to double bomb capacity, and individual aircraft attacks eliminated fuel-consuming formation flying. However, his intelligence officers predicted 70% losses. Understandably, crews believed they were being sent on suicide missions. Operation Meeting House, March 9th to 10th, 1945, vindicated the $3 billion gamble decisively. Specifically, 334 B-29s launched carrying 1,665 tons of napalm incendiaries targeting northeastern Tokyo, the most densely populated urban area in the world. Consequently, the attack destroyed 15.8 square miles, generated temperatures reaching 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, and killed approximately 100,000 people in a single night, more than either atomic bomb individually. Meanwhile, American losses: only 14 B-29s, 4.2% of the attacking force, far below predicted catastrophic casualties. Ultimately, this single raid killed more people than Dresden, Hamburg's firestorm, or Hiroshima's immediate toll, proving that properly employed B-29s could devastate enemy industrial capacity while suffering minimal losses. However, this tactical vindication represented only the first of 3 distinct pathways to victory that would justify every dollar spent. Subsequently, within 10 days following Operation Meeting House, LeMay's forces flew 1,595 sorties, dropped 9,373 tons of incendiaries, and destroyed 31 square miles across Japan's 4 largest cities. Consequently, loss rates plummeted from 2.5% in January to 0.63% in April as Japanese fighter opposition collapsed. Eventually, by war's end, B-29s had systematically destroyed 40% of 66 Japanese cities' built-up areas, rendering 8 million people homeless and reducing industrial output 40 to 60% across major sectors. Meanwhile, the often overlooked Operation Starvation mining campaign proved extraordinarily cost-effective. Specifically, flying only 1,529 sorties, 5.7% of total missions, B-29s laid 12,135 naval mines that sank or damaged 1,250,000 tons of Japanese shipping. Remarkably, this exceeded all other methods combined during the same period, effectively completing Japan's naval blockade and starving the country's war economy. Furthermore, the atomic missions represented strategic bombing's culmination rather than isolated events. Specifically, Enola Gay and Boxcar delivered the psychological shock that provided Japanese leadership face-saving rationale to surrender, but only after months of conventional B-29 attacks had already devastated Japan's ability to continue fighting. Finally, the United States Strategic Bombing Survey concluded definitively: Japan would have surrendered by December 31st, 1945, even without atomic bombs, Soviet entry, or planned invasion, assuming conventional B-29 bombing continued. Clearly, the aircraft that nearly failed catastrophically had become what the survey called the most formidable force of destruction that the world had ever seen. Nevertheless, the true measure of this investment's worth lay not in destruction capability alone, but in its strategic mathematics of victory. Ultimately, the $3 billion investment that exceeded the Manhattan Project by 50% delivered 3 distinct pathways to victory. First, conventional strategic bombing devastated Japanese industrial capacity and civilian morale through systematic city destruction. Second, naval mining operations strangled shipping routes more effectively than submarine warfare. Third, atomic weapons delivery provided the decisive psychological shock, enabling Japanese surrender without invasion. Additionally, Soviet reverse engineering of 3 emergency landed B-29s into 847 Tu-4 Bull bombers demonstrates the design's sophisticated superiority. Consequently, Stalin's crash program mobilized 900 factories to copy technology so advanced it reshaped early Cold War nuclear balance. Moreover, the engineering challenge proved so complex that Soviet industry struggled to replicate 1940s American manufacturing techniques. Furthermore, cost-benefit analysis validates the investment completely. Specifically, Operation Downfall Invasion projected 500,000 plus American casualties and millions of Japanese deaths. Therefore, the B-29 campaign shortened the war by months or years, saving potentially millions of lives while demonstrating American industrial supremacy globally. Finally, the bomber that cost more than splitting the atom didn't just deliver nuclear weapons. It created the strategic air power doctrine that defined the Cold War, pioneered technologies still used in modern aviation, and proved that revolutionary capability sometimes requires revolutionary risk. Clearly, every dollar of the $3 billion gamble was justified by ending history's most devastating war while establishing American technological dominance for decades.